Besner. Welcome to the Biohacking Secrets Show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I am very excited to talk with you because we speak with a lot of people on the show and just with through our network, and your depth of knowledge in detoxification and thermoregulation and immune health is second to none.
Thank you.
I want to get into a lot of those topics to help people that may be dealing with low-level infections or hormonal imbalances that can spawn from some of these chronic infections and toxicities in our modern world today. For people to understand a little bit more about your story,
Okay.
take us back 22 years ago. How did all this begin?
Okay. Well, prior to that, actually, I was sort of a pre-med guy, and following an allopathic track. So I went to undergraduate school in
Allopathic being Western medicine.
Correct. And I went to undergrad in Boston University, and then graduated, started at Case Western Reserve Medical, and found about a year in that it wasn't quite my cup of tea. But I had all of that sort of background. Mm-hmm. And then left, took a leave, told my parents, and they were very disappointed because they were on my son the doctor thing,
Would you tell them you were going to go be a lawyer instead?
Well, no. But, Long Island, South Shore, that whole thing, mm-hmm. you got the buzz. So after they got over the shock, I pursued other things for a few years and started a family. And when my daughter got sick, when she was about maybe 14 or 15 years old, they weren't quite sure what her challenge was. Actually, they thought she was suffering from abdominal pain, and that she got diagnosed with endometriosis. We went there were 2 surgical centers that were available in the country that were doing these special microsurgeries, and they had a 99% success rate. Mm-hmm. So we went and pursued that. The place was in Atlanta. 3 months later, she still had abdominal pain. So when we asked why, they said, "Have you ever had your daughter tested for Lyme disease?" And now remember, 22 years ago, Lyme was hardly on the radar screen, mm-hmm. so to speak. Of course, we had her tested, and then she she got clinically tested positive for 2 strains, the East and West Coast strain of Lyme disease, and many of the co-infections, which explained a lot of other things, symptoms that she was experiencing that we couldn't really understand.
Do you recall what type of test you got back at that time?
Well, it was done actually in Fort Lauderdale. There was a chiropractor that was using vials, like homeopathics, to test, like they do for allergies.
So it was like autonomic response testing or muscle testing?
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty much. And then afterwards we did IGenics and all the more formal
That's
blood
what I
testing
did in
stuff.
2011.
Yeah, so the Western blots and all that, yeah. But then, this was the initial stages, we just needed to kind of get a handle as to what was going on. But even at that point, there weren't a lot of Lyme literate doctors that were available, and we had means, so we did pursue what we thought was the greatest doctor, still considered one of the greatest, Joseph Bioscano, and he had a practice in East Hampton, Long Island. So
right in the thick of it.
Yeah, pretty much. So we would travel every 6 weeks to see him. I'm kind of a interesting guy in terms of family upbringing. I didn't want my daughter's experience of her childhood to be just around disease or feeling bad, or actually be defined by her symptom. Mm-hmm. Or her diagnosis, and I think that's a problem in America in general, that you get a diagnosis, all of a sudden it's a label, and then you hide behind that for whatever reason. And so for her and for us as a family, when we went to New York to visit the doctor, we spent 3 days in Manhattan, had a good dinner, saw a show, we just had fun. Mm-hmm. And then, by the way, we have to go see the doctor for a half hour, an hour, and that kind of thing.
That's great.
So anyway, that was sort of the backdrop. I listened to a few of your interviews and got a chance to get a feel for your passion. And what I experienced with my daughter was I just took a look at her main symptoms, and they were basically pain, inflammation, and what I considered systemic toxicity. When I looked at the dynamic, I said, okay, we see the doctor once every 6 weeks. We had local management here in Florida, but that was the external Lyme literate people. And so really, when it comes down to managing healthcare, it was on us, because 99% of the time we manage our healthcare. And so the best thing I could have ever done for my daughter was to sort of empower her to take responsibility for her health challenge and learn the tools that she needs to survive, to be healthy, to live whatever what she defined as a normal life. Okay? Anyway, that being said, I started to look at her symptoms, and then I started to think about ways that I could help her. And having a little engineering background and being sort of creative and have a lot of intuitive inputs and things like that, I started focusing on toxicity. I looked at the best ways to detoxify. What was really known at the time was chelation, or like IV therapy. And they were using some either pharmaceuticals or natural supplements to sort of cause a cell to purge toxins. And then I discovered that there are actual frequencies of sun energy that mobilize all the toxins in your body. It's the way we're supposed to be done naturally. If you dial back the history of the earth to 8,000 years ago, when Jesus, Moses, and Buddha lived, we lived in caves, we lived in tents, we woke up by the sunlight, we were regulated by natural events. And then I looked at today's society, and we live in homes, we live in urban societies where we don't touch the earth anymore, and so we're not grounded, and all these things really have changed and sort of morphed our abilities to fulfill our lives in a healthful way. That's if you're not genetically dispossessed or disposed, or if you don't have a health challenge like Lyme or microbial events or cancer or all the things that are out there, that the numbers are staggering, as you know. So I locked on sun rays, and then I looked at the available infrared devices that an average person could buy. At that point, 22 years ago, they were mostly used by sports medicine doctors to help the players heal faster and lower their pain thresholds. So if you ask my wife, she would tell you this part of the story. She bought a one-way ticket for me to go to China and not to come back without something. But really what I did was I spent a lot of time on research. I looked and I researched the engineering involved in infrared. I did research and I interviewed more than 35 factories when I went over to China originally. This was 20 plus years ago. And I started developing devices, mostly just for our personal use. Julia got such great results from...
Julia's your daughter?
Yeah. That she... the doctor saw it. They said, can we start making these devices for them? And that was essentially the genesis of our company.
What type of results was she getting?
Lowering pain, detoxification, better night's sleep, more energy, more focus, like everything that you know that's contra to what would be a Lyme symptom these days. Yeah. And we've developed over the years, really refined the infrared devices. All of our devices that we make are considered Class 2 medical with FDA, so we've gone through all the individual third-party testing by the labs for the toxicity or biotoxicity of the different materials we use. We use United Laboratories to test all the electrical pieces to it. And then, of course, we have to go through the whole process with FDA, which you can just open up a vein, Anthony, and figure out how much money and time that takes to go through. It's amazing. Truly.
It sounds daunting, like something I would prefer to avoid completely.
Yes, you rather stick needles in some part of your body than do that process. But what I chose was to sort of play to the medical side of my background, and I felt that we didn't really start our business as a normal business. We didn't get a venture capitalist. We had limited funds ourselves. We sort of grew our company organically, and really our product base organically, which we have about 22 SKUs now, that among the things that we made. But our most popular things that we do, devices that we make and that we sell, are the infrared saunas, the portable ones in particular, and a class of healing pads, we call them, which are infrared full spectrum pads, and they come in different sizes based on body parts and what your goals are to try to achieve.
Right. Okay. So this is interesting. So 22 years ago, your daughter started experiencing abdominal pain. It was diagnosed as endometriosis. She had that treated. It didn't change anything. And then you started looking into other options. And, a big part of our model of healthcare is that just about everything can be traced upstream to a toxicity or an infection. Okay. Certain genetic predispositions increase the probability that those things can have a negative long-term effect that could then spawn into hormonal problems or deficiencies or stress on the body that's coming from within. How did you start using, so for someone listening that may be experiencing physical pain in their body, Lyme disease, they know that their toxic, let's call it, it's a tough word. We're trying to also avoid in this episode people putting labels on themselves that are disempowering.
Right.
But what type of protocols in having people now all over the world using your saunas have you seen to be most effective? Let's talk about disease and then work our way up to optimal health and how to use a Therasage sauna.
Awesome. All right, so I have almost a left and right brain approach to this. The sauna is a full body experience. So there...
Minus your head.
Minus your head. Well, for those that don't know what that means, the portable sauna, your head is out. And there's very particular reasons why we have designed it that way. Because with your head out, your brain cells are much more sensitive to heat than your body is. So
why they wear the Russians wear the special hats while they're
pretty
in the
much,
sauna.
yes.
Protect their ears and head.
Yeah, you know that? Have you been to the Russian baths?
Many times.
Yeah, right. So that's, I know, it's kind of crazy what they do. But that's basically the idea, is that, above 105 degrees Fahrenheit core temperature, your brain cells start to break down. That's when you'll start hallucinating and so forth. Most viruses and bacteria, and even some cancers above 102 degrees core temperature, they start to break down. So think about how beautiful this is. At 102 degrees Fahrenheit, your immune system, your T57 killer cells, actually kick into overdrive. They're 800 times more active. So look at the curve. Your body, your brain senses an invader of some kind, right? It cuts off your thermostat. You start raising your core temperature. That's a fever. You get that fever up to 101, 102. There's a natural die-off of bacteria and viruses and fungus and all that, parasites. And at the same time, at 102, your immune system kicks into overdrive to gobble up all these guys that are weak now. And that's sort of a really watered-down version of how your immune system works.
But still adds a lot of color, because I'm a big believer that the heat kills infections, the infrared is more effective on toxins. And again, that's an overgeneralization, but when we take people that are dealing with certain infections and we get them in the hottest sauna they could possibly access, symptoms really improve, especially if they're conscientious of like head temperature. And similarly, when people are dealing with heavy metal toxicity, or you've got plastics and all sorts of other things, glyphosate, the infrared, particularly when stacked with some things that we're going to get into in this episode, can mobilize and then position the body to eliminate those. And I feel like they work well hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, let me explain something that's sort of a semi-important feature. Infrared harnesses wavelengths and frequencies of sun energy. The frequencies harmonize and they resonate at the same frequency as the water inside of our bodies. Gerald Pollack's whole work about structured water is all about that, the near frequencies resonating with the same frequencies as our water.
His book's The Fourth Phase of Water. We'll link to that in the show notes.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. And we know Jerry personally, so it's all good. Traditionally, we have hot rock saunas and we have steam rooms, and they work on convection heat. So you have an element somewhere that heats up the ambient air, that touches your skin, that raises your skin temperature, and then that temperature has to fight hard to get through the insulating fat that's under your skin, that's designed to protect your insides from extreme heat or extreme cold. So now that's the hard way to do it. So those environments, although they're effective, have to really be dialed up the temperature at 200 degrees Fahrenheit or more in order for it to penetrate through that insulating layer, for it to be effective inside, for detoxing. Now, we're not designed to be in 200 degree Fahrenheit temperature for very long. We will. So now infrared works just the opposite. It's a wavelength. It uses a different kind of measure to get the frequencies into the body. Okay, and so now that the wavelength is coming through and it resonates with the water inside your fat molecule that's sitting on the inside of your skin, it goes right past it. It's not insulated. You don't have to dial the temperature up very high. In fact, for general purposes, for general health, 120 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit is all you need for general therapy. That's only 27 degrees warmer than your core temperature. So that's tolerable. You can sit in that all day, basically, if your schedule could permit. So
we almost reached out to you before this episode to have you bring two saunas so we could just sit in one and record the whole time.
Actually, I've done some interviews in there, and they're hilarious when they do that. Oh, yeah, it's, you're bobblehead because
We
you
should
just
have done it. We should
yeah,
have
I
done
know.
it.
Well, next time.
Next time, all right.
Hope
round
you'll have
two.
me back.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it works on a little different principle, and it's more akin to the way the body is, the way we in the animal kingdom are set up, because that's the way nature actually intended it to be. The relationship between sun energy and our bodies to keep us healthy. Now, being in Florida, us all in Florida, the first thing, don't go out in the sun without, lathering up with some kind of chemical based that's, whatever, sunscreen of sort. And that's sort of the wrong thing to do. It's designed to create people to think that you can't be exposed too long before getting some kind of skin cancer or something like that.
As long as you don't burn. That's really like a lot of the studies that people are fearful from the sun because of those studies. That sentence was awful, but you know what I'm saying. They're based on the fact that like if you burn, there are issues. But if you're conscientious about your sun tolerance and you stay within your range, you're good.
Sure. And actually, I'd love to tell the audience that there is an app for smartphones that's called D-Minder.
Yeah.
D-M-I-N-D-E-R. And it's a free app. And you can dial in and you can actually put in your skin type, how much skin exposure you have, and then based on your phone, which signals to a GPS so it knows exactly where you are, it'll tell you how much sunlight you need in order for you to get your maximum amount of vitamin D and based on where you are, which is wonderful.
Very cool. We'll link to that as well. That's a nice resource.
Yeah. So the radiant frequencies of sun energy work differently in the body, and they penetrate through this insulating layer, and they actually try to harbor in the densest parts of our body, which is your muscle mass or organ tissue. Those are also the most vascular parts of your body, right? So now we've got a wavelength coming in, it's creating a bioresonance, and that resonant is residing inside your muscle or your organ. That resonant creates a little bit of heat or warmth from inside. It warms up your vessels. The vessels dilate, vasodilation from the warmth. And then magic starts because we're improving circulation, bringing more oxygen. If you're eating well, nutrition-wise, or if you are on any kind of medications, you're getting 15% more exposure to your organs and higher potentiating or absorption. So there's a lot of just really interesting physiological things that happen just from sunlight. What we did was we created a better mousetrap because people's schedules, they can't get out in the sun, and if they're in the sun, they're in at the wrong times of the day, so they're not getting the right frequencies, or they're in for too long, and so forth. So here you can sort of control it. You can be sitting in a sauna for a half hour, let's say, get a great detox, start your day, which there are protocols, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, but there are better times to do it to get a maximized result and use your time efficiently, schedule permitting. And then again, I divide it between the effects of the healing pad, which is more like a spotlight, meaning that I can bring the pad right to an area, an organ that I want to cleanse, or a joint that needs to be healed, or a muscle group or whatever, versus a full body experience. So, and for my daughter, she experienced body pain, so the healing pads were perfect for that. When I noticed that she had challenges with her liver or some of her organs, so we could just do a 200-year-old protocol that's from Eastern Europe that's using natural castor oil packs, and we use the infrared frequency to drive that oil right into the organ. It's non-invasive. In 4 treatments, the organ's completely cleansed. So there's so many interesting things to do with this.
This is great. Yeah, I'd love to dive into some more of those protocols that you've seen helpful for people. So to kind of sum it up, you've got the traditional Finnish sauna that is at say an LA Fitness, or even the ones that they do over there where they use wood, which I believe to be better than a traditional Finnish sauna ran on electricity if we're going to split hairs. But that more heats from the outside in. Correct. Like an oven, where infrared heats like from the inside out. The wavelengths of the light penetrate from the inside, and then you start getting that detoxification effect where fat cells or whatever's harboring these toxins will rupture, release, and mobilize some of the toxins, and then they'll get eliminated. Talk to me a little bit more about some of the differences between, for someone that's like, there's so much information out there right now. What's the difference between a traditional Finnish sauna and an infrared sauna? And then when you get into infrared sauna, you got some talking about how near infrared is the way to go, and some talking about how far infrared is the way to go. My head's spinning. I just want to do something good for myself. Can you make sense of it all, please, Rob?
Sure. All right. Well, look, you get something on all these discussions, Finnish, steam, hot rock, all that. You're going to get something from it.
Hot rock.
Right. But what's the best way, the most efficient way? And the most efficient way by far, and they've done a study on this where they actually measured a drop of sweat on the same guy that went into all three environments, the dry sauna, the steam room, and the infrared sauna. And they discovered that in that one drop of sweat, there was 85% more toxins in that drop of sweat from the infrared environment than all the others. But you can detox. Sweating is synonymous with detoxing. So the difference is that in the convection heat environment, you're just pulling toxins that are available and free radicals that are in your bloodstream. With the infrared, it's actually a wavelength that's breaking loose and mobilizing all of these toxins that are actually stored in your fat and your muscles and your organs.
And a mobilization that can even be amplified with up to 4,000 milligrams of full flush niacin. And we'll talk more about that.
Wow. Oh, I can tell you I had a fleeting moment on niacin.
Hey, me too.
Oh, my God.
Took myself out for a day.
Actually, I told my wife to call 911 because in 60 seconds, it was just like that cartoon where I watched the mercury go up and below the top of the. I didn't realize what I was.
All right, so you're going to pick back up in 1 second,
Yes.
just for the listeners, because we teased on it, and because my Yaya's caretaker thought that she had to go to the hospital too. If you're considering using niacin as a way to get your cells to rupture and release more toxins, start at 50 milligrams. Get Seeking Health niacin lozenges. Slowly work your way up, lozenge by lozenge, until you get to like 500 milligrams, because there's an uncomfortable flushing effect where
Yes.
blood rushes to the surface of your skin. You get a histamine dump, and it can be quite uncomfortable. And then from there, you can play around with like a Twin Lab niacin or a Rugby niacin if you don't mind some magnesium stearate and you're not scared of that. And then you can start dabbling with the dosages from 2,000 to 4,000 milligrams of niacin that have been shown to really ramp up that detoxification effect. But you got to start in the kiddie pool, make sure you're cool with it, and you're going to end up probably looking like a lobster and feeling some discomfort. But you can decide if the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
Just wanted to-
And I think it's a very valid protocol and approach. It wouldn't be something that I would recommend in the beginning. It's interesting that you use the pool, because I often say I wouldn't, if I was teaching you how to swim for the first time, I wouldn't throw you in the deep end. I start people off with their toe in the water, and I just have them comfortably walk into, especially if they're symptomatic and they're showing some kind of, I don't want to compromise their health experience in the process of trying to make them feel better.
And it's so easy, like, for if someone is experiencing toxicity or chronic infections like Lyme disease, where when you incorporate some of these protocols, you can experience a Herxheimer reaction or a
Correct.
detox effect. And if you are too aggressive, I promise you, trying to do more will not get you wherever you think you want to go faster. It'll just make the journey suck.
Right.
And it's really important to find a cadence that your body is responsive to, where you can still experience moments of joy, preferably every day, and preferably a few moments of joy. Because if you're just flushing toxins out the whole time and killing off bacteria and viruses and parasites and all these other things that can come with a toxicity, you're going to be miserable. And trust me, it's better to find the pace that works with your body.
I agree completely. And so when I coach, I always empower the student, customer, patient, whatever, to understand that there are basically 4 or 5 symptoms to look for when you're detoxing. Lightheadedness, dizziness, nausea, headaches, and lethargy, feeling a little tired. Generally, if you feel lethargic, it'll be maybe an hour or so after you would do sauna or using the infrared frequencies. But what I also say is you don't get gold stars or score any extra points if that you're not feeling well and you're in the middle of a sauna session that you push yourself through, because all that's going to do is start dumping. Your body is already telling you that you're at a toxic level where it's showing you some symptom or some sign.
And in like 100% of these cases, it seems like the liver is sluggish.
Yes.
So you've got our main detoxification organ, not like our biggest, because we get it, there's a lot of skin and we detox through the skin, but like almost everything has to go through the liver. And if in individuals with the liver's compromised, all you end up doing is causing a traffic jam. Right. There's a bottleneck there. You can only get rid of so much.
Right.
And unless you're also integrating things like milk thistle and coffee enemas and adjusting your diet to match, whether you want to call it your genetic blueprint or whatever works best for you, like changes need to be made in order to optimize the liver to therefore optimize detoxification.
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes we'll suggest, at least quarterly, even with everything that we're doing with sauna and detox protocols, to just address sort of detoxing your liver or taking the burden off.
Yeah.
And we're really keen on using binders, different binder protocols, to also augment, to take that less burden off of the organs.
What are you seeing work well in those binder protocols?
Well, we have two different ones. We start with generally in the beginning for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Again, it depends on how the customer presents themselves. But I'll start off with like activated carbon or a bentonite clay. There's some that are better than others, but those are pretty easy to get and very available. And there's a way to introduce that. What I like to do is put them in a drinking bottle, usually stainless or glass, and basically shake it up. So normally they'll come in a cap. You can buy them in bulk, but you take the cap and rather than swallowing it and going through the GI tract, going through the liver, and then sluggishly getting into your bloodstream, if you sip it, then shake it up and sip it. Now you're hydrolyzing that binder, and it'll flow right through and basically get into your bloodstream pretty fast.
That's interesting. And in the case of like activated carbon or activated charcoal, you also look like you just made out with an octopus. So that's an added bonus.
Well, that's why I like stainless, so you don't see what's in the jar.
Right. Yeah.
And also the clay actually will taste a little gritty, but it doesn't taste like anything. No. But I do, there are lots of ways to mobilize toxins, and I like binder protocols, particularly in today's toxic world, because we're getting it through our food, air, and basically our water. Okay, aside from everything else that's going on, so you could have microbial things happening or parasites that are showing off or throwing off microtoxins themselves. But I assume living in the world that we're in, particularly if you're in an urban sort of setting, that you're toxic.
Yeah.
And so based on that, I start everybody off in a sauna protocol with basically a goal of 30 minutes at 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
How many times a week?
I prefer every day, actually.
Every day, yeah. Gangster.
But again, if your schedule can't permit, so we have a truck driver that called up last week and says, Robby, I get up at 4 a.m. I'm not getting up at 3 to do a sauna protocol. I said, fine, what can you give me? Well, I get home at 6 and then I take dinner. Fine, let's do something right after dinner. So I'll work around anybody's schedule. The point is, it's not supposed to be work. It's supposed to be a lifestyle adjustment and choice. To live better, fulfill your goals and your dreams, live your bliss, contribute to your family, your community, your church, whatever it is, your passion. And we can't do that if we're compromised with our health. You're always playing catch up. Yeah. And so you really need to address this whole toxic thing on a daily basis because we get toxic every day. And you mentioned glyphosate before, and one of my dear friends is Dr. Zach Bush, and he did a whole thesis about glyphosates. And so, and also I'm in a little mastermind, and one of my mentors is Dr. Lee Cowden. And Lee said in one of our sessions that now they're measuring the amount of glyphosate in our water and in our air that we're breathing, and it's somewhere between 50 and 70%. Depending on where we are. Yeah. So it's something we can't get around. It's causing leaky gut, and you know all about that. Yeah. So we need to actually create a way to detox with the foods that we're eating and lifestyle things like sauna. If we can integrate that into our daily routine, just a half hour every day, then I know at least we're going to stay even with the amount of toxins we're taking in a day. Now, if you present yourself with a challenge,
you also just feel a lot better too.
Oh my God!
So for someone that's like having trouble imagining the invisible, like we're talking about toxins, and maybe you haven't done a doctor's data heavy metal test, or you haven't looked at glyphosate levels or levels of plastics and things like that. Don't even worry about that stuff. Try it. We have an intuition. Our body knows what we need, and when you're making adjustments and integrating biohacks that upgrade your health and performance, you feel it. Yes. If you were to use the Therasage or get in the sauna at your gym, if you don't have access, like we're not trying to sell you a Therasage here, we're just explaining some of the benefits of this type of infrared light exposure. But get yourself in a sauna and you'll feel the difference. And then if you want to make it more convenient, that's when a Therasage could come in.
Right. That's a great point. And the thing is that I'm not just a road warrior like you mentioned earlier. It's really just that I just start my day with intention. So I'm an early bird. I get up generally before the sunrise, and so it's quiet. I can meditate. I can be grateful for the things and set my intentions for the day, and it's my quiet time. So I combine and I stack that whole sort of mental, spiritual piece with my sauna experience. So now I get out and I'm sort of grateful. Yeah. I've spent my half hour. I usually do it a little bit longer, but that's just my personal choice. And then I start my day. I wait a little bit after the sauna. I allow the frequencies to continue to resonate inside of me. And then maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes later, I'll jump in the shower or go outside, jump in the pool, whatever, just to kind of rinse off.
Yeah.
Now, back to the public settings. This is interesting. So, all right. So first of all, let's say we didn't know each other before today, and we were sitting next to each other at a movie theater. We paid for our seats, and you sat down, and I'm watching the credits go up, and all of a sudden you're hacking, sneezing, coughing, and all this stuff. The first thing I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to get sick from this, right? And if I didn't pay for my seat, I probably would move somewhere next if I had availability. But because I paid for my seat, I'm sitting there, and the whole time I said, I'm not going to be able to enjoy this movie because I'm going to catch your germs, right? Now, let's say you're in a public setting like a gym or some kind of club that has a sauna, and you're waiting to get out because it's a two-person one, and you're waiting to get in, and you're the guy coming out, and you're hacking and sneezing. I'm thinking the same thing. There's no way I'm going to get into that sauna, and after you were in there, because I'm going to catch whatever you had. But in fact, the infrared frequencies will kill all airborne bacteria, viruses, and so forth. So there's no concern about me catching anything that that might be communicable, except for your sweat, because like we mentioned earlier, 85% more toxins are in your sweat. And if you weren't a good citizen and brought a towel, and I sat down in a pool of your sweat, and I'm now opening up my skin, I could be uploading your toxins into my body. Not good.
Lucky you.
Well. I don't want to know you that. I don't want to know you that well.
I got good toxins, Robby. I got good toxins.
Cool. All right. So, but the point is that for everybody out there, bring a towel and just sit on your towel. Or if the guy comes out and says, "Hey, you should bring a towel next time," just don't sit in anybody else's sweat, because that's not potential.
I don't think you got to convince anyone of that.
Okay. Well, you don't think
that's
about
an interesting
it.
point.
You don't think about it when you go to a health club. But more important, that's the only thing that you have to be concerned about, really, on that level. And I mean, it's great to. It's sort of like an interesting thing about when you get into the malaise of not feeling well, because people that are symptomatic, it isn't generally. We did have a couple of situations, like as I was mentioning earlier, I teach at one of the resorts here, health resorts here, and I mentioned this topic about, well, unless you were at Chernobyl, and somebody in the audience said, "Yeah, I was there," I said, "Oh my God!" And I actually had a dear friend that was a doctor that was in a cornfield, and a crop duster went over, and he got dusted, and he went into coma for 10 days. So unless that happened, basically we get symptomatic pretty slowly. We get toxic. We get symptomatic at the result of sort of climbing, I call it a toxic mountain. And we detox the same way. If you're spending 10 to 15 years getting toxic and then showing some symptom, you can't, there's no magic bullet here. The sauna is just a slow way to unwind that. And we want to bring you down the mountain sort of carefully, little baby steps at a time. Earlier we talked about starting in the shallow end to the deep end, and that's the same analogy. I walk everybody down the mountain slowly, safely. And the biggest challenge I have, actually, Anthony, is people that have chronic ailments, because they're so sick and tired of feeling sick that they start getting some relief, and then they want to just hit it hard. And that's when I have to talk them down and say, hey, look, this is a slow and steady deal. And you have to be mindful of those symptoms, lightheadedness, nausea, and so forth. And even if you're in for 30 minutes, here's another perfect example. You're feeling good, you're doing your sauna routine, you're doing it 30 minutes, you're doing it every day, and you're feeling really great, getting more sleep or better sleep, more focus, more energy, everything is going good for you. Then you go out and you have a meal tonight. And the meal was cooked with some oil that was just turning. So there's a whole bunch of mycotoxins that just spilled into you. I look at you, you're healthy, you're vibrant, so I can't see, or you can't see from the outside what's going on the inside. But your body, listen to that inner doctor inside of you. When you're in that sauna and you're in for 20 minutes and all of a sudden you're going, oh my God, like I'm You don't score extra points for staying in for the extra 10 minutes, no matter what Robby says or Anthony says. Your goal is 30. But then listen to the doctor inside of you. And if something's going on, what we do is we hydrate thoroughly. So we drink about 8 to 10 ounces of water before the sauna, and we drink about the same after. Before promotes sweating, after dilutes the toxic load on your organs, and makes it easier for your body to flush out whatever's there.
Are you putting salt or electrolytes in the water?
If you're using it regularly, let's say every day of the week, at least once a week, depending on how much you're sweating, we do like to put trace minerals. Generally, you can buy them.
Yeah.
They're very inexpensive. It's like...
There's a product called Concentrace, and then another one called 40,000 Volts by Trace Minerals Research. We'll link to them. Both are great.
Yeah, and they're perfect. And you put 4 drops, they make the water taste a little sour.
Yeah.
But you do put 4 drops
They taste pretty nasty, but they work well.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. And you have to be mindful that when in the sweating out process, you're losing salts, you're losing trace minerals, you're losing electrolytes. And so depending on how often you're using and how much you sweat, you have to just be mindful and put some of that back in. But it's really easy.
Yeah, and even to a heightened degree if you're also chelating metals at the same time, because you're going to be pulling out more minerals, like the good guys, along with the stuff that we don't respond as well to biologically.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about thermoregulation, because there's more awareness today around hormonal issues. I think a lot of, because of the bioidentical hormone replacement industry, there's a lot more awareness around like low testosterone and that sort of thing. But let's talk a little bit about what happens when the thyroid isn't working properly and how that impacts our ability to like maintain a healthy body temperature, which is what dictates all of these biological functions, right? And at least in my case, I started when I was at my worst. Hands and feet were cold, body was stiff a lot of the time. Thyroid function, when tested, was confirmed to be very low. And if you are trying to move through either a low-level infection or just optimize your health, that comes with a healthy thyroid and healthy thermoregulation. Can you explain a little bit can you go a little bit deeper and also explain how a sauna can help in these situations?
Okay, so, the first thing, just to reverse that discussion, the sauna the infrared sauna in particular, creates what's called a false fever. So we can raise your core temperature.
Hippocrates said, give me the ability to induce a fever and I can cure any man.
Yeah, exactly. He also said, if you listen to your patient long enough, they'll tell you what their diagnosis is. And if you listen to them a little longer, they'll tell you what the remedy is too. So it's really about actively listening, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I actually want to bring him back into the topic because I do speak and teach there, and it is a reason why I changed my chemistry.
Institute.
Yeah, and it is a reason why I changed my own formula for the new Thera 360 Plus sauna with the red lights, and we'll talk about that a little later if we have time. Cool. But on thermoregulation, you're so right. And the problem is that when your body starts to get compromised, inflammation and toxicity run on the same road together. So if we lower the toxic burden, then we lower inflammation. So it takes a lot of the stress off of our normal organs that are working overtime, like your thyroid, like your pituitary, like your liver and cleansing organs. Adrenals, right, exactly. So let's talk about unwinding that coil. And so if we lower toxicity and we lower inflammation, now it's sort of like turning the pilot light up a little bit inside of you. Now we start getting less toxic, or your body becomes less toxic, and so some of the burden on thermoregulation from your thyroid starts to move in a positive direction. Of course, we have thyroid people that, challenges like Hashimoto's and things like that, where it might be chemically based. So there are supplements, and usually iodine is a good one to support thyroid.
There's a huge connection there with grains and gluten and glyphosate and all the other anti-nutrients. Like, I've never had anyone not start to improve. It doesn't mean like get 100%, but when they ruthlessly eliminate that category of food.
Yeah, and that's where I liked where we were going in our discussion a minute ago, but because we can
go back there, man. I didn't want to.
No, we're all there. The process is a slow process, and then one day you wake up and you're going, "Wow, I really feel like crap," right? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you get hit with a brick, but it really wasn't just one day. It was a whole process that moved along.
It's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, exactly. And so the unwinding is the same way. And just that your suggestion is perfect. Like if you can't do it every day, that's okay. But if you start doing it and you start feeling a little better, then feeling better promotes feeling better. Just like when you don't feel well, you kind of get malaise. And if you've got a challenge like Lyme or microbial, they're anaerobic organisms. And so they don't like oxygen. Movement creates oxygen, right, in the blood. That works the other way. And so when you don't feel good, you become lethargic and you're sitting back and now you're sluggish, and that works in the favor of all of these onsets of viruses, bacteria, microbes, parasites, all those guys, right? So the sauna will work in the other direction because improving circulation brings more blood. I wanted to get into talking about the differences between near and far frequencies and why we took a full spectrum approach. But the near frequencies produce natural production of nitric oxide, which is a transient gas. It creates vasodilation, and it also triggers your hemoglobin to grab more oxygen when you make it available. That's why...
so vasodilation and expansion of blood vessels and capillaries so that more blood and oxygen and nutrients get delivered where they're supposed to go.
Exactly.
And what was the other thing that you said?
And it tells you, it also triggers your blood to grab more oxygen when you make it available.
Right, the effect on hemoglobin.
Yeah,
right.
so now we're moving more blood that has oxygen in it, and the tissues and everything are going, yay, and the anaerobes are going, whoa, I don't like that, get that away from me. So we can completely reverse the whole spin of what we're talking about and chronic ailment by simply starting with detoxifying, using sauna, getting your blood moving.
It essentially mimics exercise, but you're sitting on your butt. And then like when you go even deeper for those of you that like to really nerd out, like we're talking about hemoglobin delivering more oxygen, but there's also like as CO2 levels increase in the body, which happen when we exercise, which happen when we sauna, there's something known as oxygen dissociation from hemoglobin, where the hemoglobin actually releases more oxygen and makes it available for use as CO2 levels rise. So you've got all this happening while you sit on your butt. It's like you don't need to necessarily understand what is technically going on to be able to benefit from a sauna. Like I couldn't tell you how electricity, really works in an intelligent fashion, but I don't need to be able to turn the light on in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the idea. And we're getting a little heady, and I know that it's really great for the audience, but the truth is it just makes you feel good. It's very primal. And you just have to start off slow. There are various approaches. If you're looking for optimal health, there's an approach. If you're looking for better sleep, there's an approach.
Let's explain those, and then we'll get into near and far.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, basically, it's about what we talked about kind of staging yourself in. So we start off, I start off with a goal of 30 minutes at 130 degrees Fahrenheit. If they come to me and they're real compromised, we may start off at 15 or 20 minutes. But then again, what I want to do is start to have the individual start to learn to listen to the doctor inside them and make choices based on that.
Turn up that intuition and trust it.
Right, because that's the real thing that's going on. And if you push yourself a little too far, then you pay a price. And if you are compromised going in, there's no point to do that if you learn the way. And so we start everybody off there, and it's generally for the first couple of weeks. And then at that point, they check back in with me, or I give them the next step, which would be to start dialing up. The three variables you have is basically time, temperature, and your outside environment, like what your body is doing, how it's responding to that. Okay. And so when we start off with our portable sauna, actually it's one of the hottest ones of this kind of technology.
You guys get up to like 170 plus.
170, right? Yeah. Most of the wooden ones will go up to about 140 or so. Yeah. And we get from 0 or room temperature to 140 in about 15 minutes. So it's not a prolonged process to get that temperature up there. So what I would
time in the morning when you're in a rush, like if you have to wake up and it takes 40 minutes for your sauna to get up to speed, you're going to either be waking up a lot earlier, or you're going to need to skip the sauna if you want to.
Or turn it on, go back to sleep.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Just none of that makes sense.
Right.
And the wooden ones are not designed the same way. We developed a speedboat. The wooden ones are more like a tugboat. They're beautiful and they're ornate and they do a great job. there is a reason having your head out, like I mentioned earlier, that's better for a few things. One, your brain temperature doesn't get elevated. If you do have any dental amalgams, there'll be off-gassing of the mercury from the heat. So when you're in a conventional sauna, you'll get an expansion and a contraction, and so it's been measured that there'll be off-gassing. And the third thing, let me think if I remember now. It's a little subtle, but you see the sweat, and the poisons or toxins are in the sweat. There are also the micro droplets in the moisture in the air that you're creating too. Like you see the body sweat coming off of you, but if you actually felt the air is moist also, and that has toxins in.
It's sort of like being in a steam room and breathing municipal water, as opposed to, if you're going to be releasing toxins that then vaporize, your head's out. You're not breathing it in and taking it.
Exactly. So you're working hard to get the poisons out of you. Now you're breathing them back in, and your lungs are one of the fastest ways to get stuff back into your bloodstream. Yeah. So the head out is might look a little funky. Could
be no big deal. It could be a huge deal. We don't know. Yeah. That's interesting.
Well, I think it's a subtle point, but I do think it's something to mention.
Yeah.
Anyway, where were we? So we were talking about thyroid, and then we were mentioning about regulation. And so what we've just experienced is that people that do have thyroid challenges, they start weaning themselves off medication as they start getting their toxins down.
There you go.
Also, the sauna creates that false fever. So now you don't have to worry about the tingling that you might get, like some kind of peripheral neuropathy, or challenges with hot and cold, feeling that, because the sauna is doing all the heavy lifting. And so the body actually wants to find its way back. It's just sometimes it's sort of like it lost its GPS and it gets spun out onto this direction, and then all of a sudden if you show them the way back home, it starts moving in a real positive direction and pretty fast.
That's interesting. So with stepping up the protocols as well, so 30 minutes every day at around 1:30, and then let's say they're responding well, or let's say it's someone we're talking about an athlete or a high performing businessman.
Right.
Where do they start? How quickly can they ramp up, assuming they're feeling good?
Okay, I'd say within 6 weeks they could get to a really nice place, which would be around 150 degrees Fahrenheit and somewhere between 30 and 45 minute session. That's it. Every day. Yeah. And generally, I like doing it the first thing in the morning, because if you think about it, your body between 12 o'clock and 4 a.m. in the evening, your brain is detoxing and you're creating growth hormones and repair enzymes. All that stuff is happening. And you're detoxing. So when you wake up, if you remember back to our Jesus, Moses, and Buddha days, we lived in caves, we lived in tents, we lived on the land, we woke up to sunlight, and that's what that sauna represents. Yeah. It's waking your body up to the energies of sunlight.
Yeah.
And
there's some interesting studies on that too, where they were looking at light and when different indigenous cultures rose around the world, and they were like, it's actually more so temperature than light that wakes us up. Is like the sun comes up and then the temperature increases and then our body goes, time to get up. It's not necessarily like the sun's in your face. Right.
So I generally practice, every day I get up and that's the first thing I do. And so now I'm pulling out the toxins that my body's created overnight. And I'm jump-starting my body. I'm creating like a better vascular flow, better oxygen to all my vessels, my joints. If you're a little older, or if you're actually athletic and you've got it coming off of an injury, you can bring more blood to an area that needs special attention through that process. So your recovery is much faster. And so a protocol that we work very well for optimal health people would be, if you're going to work out, and you had your own portable, if you had local gym, or if you could jump into even the sauna in a gym, for it takes 8 minutes of infrared frequency in an average sized person for you to start a physiological event. So if you go in for 8 to 10 minutes before your workout, then you work out, you're creating free radicals, right? You're getting your blood moving, you're actually mobilizing toxins through the workout, then do your detox sauna after. And what that'll do is, there are a whole bunch of different kinds of toxins, but one of them is lactic acid that stores in your muscle from an overworked muscle, right? That actually the infrared sauna will pull that lactic acid out, so you'd be less sore and more likely to hit the gym the next day, because when you overwork a muscle, sometimes you need that day off, right? Yeah. And the trainer, if you got one, generally has to find that fine balance, or between working the customer hard enough so they get a benefit, but not too hard so they're too sore the next day.
Yeah.
So if you did sauna after your workout, you'd pull all of that lactic acid out and wouldn't have that after effect.
It's huge. We work with a few Olympians and NHL guys and some pro athletes, and all of them, we have various sauna integrations for recovery. And because it's not just a matter of avoiding the soreness, it's like if your body feels good and you're ready to get into another workout during the off season, you can make gains that eclipse what the other guys are doing that aren't utilizing this technology. We've talked a bit about near and far, and there's so much stuff out there. I get messages somewhat regularly from people like, this company's bashing this frequency, this other company's bashing this frequency, which one's right? Can you expand a little bit on what you mentioned and clarify some of the marketing from the science on near and far infrared?
Actually, it's a great topic, and it's one that I'm kind of passionate about because there's a lot of dis or misinformation out there, and it's unfortunate because if you're sick, you don't have the time to do all the research, and you get on and you go, I'm so confused, right? And if you're well, you do have the time, then you start going, well, which one is right? And when you go to you go to conferences and everybody's got the greatest thing going, you know? So what we did was I took a sort of I followed nature. I study nature, I study ancient cultures, and I try to incorporate a lot of their theories in the elements of what I call the pillars behind all of our technology. Mm-hmm. And so in nature developed 3 wavelengths, near, middle, and far. They all do different things. It's not one versus the other. Everybody in the room, everybody that's listening today could benefit from all 3 frequencies. Now, based on your symptoms, there might be a better cocktail or better frequencies to use to help resolve challenges you might have. And that's where the specialization of the 2 different kinds of wavelengths come. So 15, 20 years ago, all that was on the market was the far frequencies. And they go the deepest, somewhere between 3 to 5 inches into the body. And they'll mobilize heavy metals. They'll help with general global, full body detoxing and so forth. The near frequencies, the front end of the spectrum, really is skinned to about 3 centimeters down. And there you're producing natural nitric oxide. You do vasodilation of the microvessels. It helps with mitochondrial support. So if you've got low energy, people are now very sympathetic dominant. Mm-hmm. So it'll move you into parasympathetic. And so in full spectrum, you're getting all 3 wavelengths. Just recently, we added we have all of our devices are full spectrum. And what I did was, because I'm a nerd, I looked at NASA's statistical values of all the frequencies that hit the planet on a yearly basis, did 1 standard deviation, and used that as my general cocktail for how we mimic nature in our devices.
That's pretty badass.
I know, it's crazy stuff. But then looking at Hippocrates and food is the medicine, and we mentioned that some time ago, the world and the food of Hippocrates' day when he made that statement is different than today's food. And the planet is different today, in my view. We're seeing,
glyphosate, plastic,
and 18-year-old guys that have low T. We see women of 14 that are coming into clinic are sterile. The healthcare trends in cancer and heart disease and diabetes are off the chart. And a lot of it has to do with our environment, chemtrails, glyphosates, all the things we talked about, fluorides. There are so many, and the big category that I'm super passionate about is electromagnetic fields.
Right.
The silent frequencies that are causing stressors. So
I've annoyed everyone with it, I think.
Well,
it's been very important.
No,
let's actually pick up in 1 second, only because I want to take a quick second to hear from this show's awesome sponsors.
Okay.
And then we're going to continue talking about EMFs and some of these other toxins.
I'm ready.
Awesome, thanks. I got to go to the bathroom so bad.
Okay.
I was, here, if I could squeeze it.
Sure.
Thanks. No, this is fantastic. I was like...
You're still live on social.
That's good. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
You right back.
You drink too much water.
Yes.
Amalgams, that was what you forgot.
I said it already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. We're live, babe.
Hi,
case you care.
Hey,
Come
babe.
say hi if you want to say hi to the fans.
Hey.
Hey, fans.
All the
We're all
biohackers out
fans.
there. It's great
Oh,
so
the
far.
dog has to go out. I'm supposed to keep
Yeah.
Go. Go, go. Ninja.
there's so much to talk about in this topic.
Yeah, call Ninja, please.
Oh, I know. I love you too. Yeah. Where'd you get that beautiful color from, huh?
All right.
Ready?
Let's party. Kumba. Hey, everybody out.
Okay, guys.
Come on. Hey.
Go.
Let's go, guys. Kumba. Come on, buddy. We'll play later, I promise. Come on, Ninja. Come on, Ninja. 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 Whoop. Nice. There we go. Cool. Ninja. Come on.
Stay up. We got business. All right, guys. Appreciate the bathroom break.
How are we doing on timing?
I have no idea, but I'm enjoying.
56 minutes, so
56
Okay.
minutes in?
So another 10.
Cool.
Okay. All right. And then, here, ready?
When you are.
And we're back.
Okay.
So we were talking about the different toxins in our environment, some of the changes just in the past few decades,
Right.
and then how this is having so many of us, in chronic fight or flight, or otherwise known as sympathetic dominance.
Exactly.
How the sauna can bring you back into parasympathetic, and then you were elaborating on some of the benefits of the different frequencies, and how Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine, may have been more relevant at a time where people were rising and going to bed with the sun and eating food that was really charged up and not from nutrient depleted soils, but we're in a different time.
How about Twinkies that have shelf lives of 500 years?
Yeah.
We could start there,
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with Twinkies, by the way.
Just make sure you've got Twinkies in your bomb shelter.
So when I looked at that and started thinking about it, I said, I need to change my cocktail. Because what we're seeing in clinic, what we're actually seeing in the real world is something different. People are expressing all these diseases and all these challenges. And the worst part about it isn't just that this trends are so steep, Anthony. It's that they're happening, the age groups that people are experiencing these problems are coming down.
Mm-hmm.
So according to my friend Dr. Zach Bush, that's an extinction plan.
And Zach Bush is with Restore,
Right.
a product to help restore intestinal integrity and
Yeah,
heal
he's a
leaky
triple
gut.
board certified keynote speaker, and his thesis is much about this topic, that if we don't change something quick in our lifetime, we're going to see, our kids are going to be affected by all this stuff, as we know. So I changed my cocktail, and I adjusted that in the newest version of our portable sauna by introducing more near frequencies into the full spectrum. So we stacked the deck more on the near side so that we could address the adrenal stress, the nitric oxide depletion,
Mitochondrial
challenges.
dysfunction.
Yep, and general oxygenation problems in blood, and what we're seeing is an incredibly great response overall. So I'm pleased. What I did was something unusual. I developed a new kind of LED for this product. And normally LEDs are what's called monochromatic. That means that it got a single bulb that has a single frequency. And the way that the most developers manage their cocktail is by putting different arrays of bulbs to create, some kind of cocktail. I developed an LED that's got 3 frequencies in one bulb. So I can actually regulate that process and drive with a certain regulated power more photon energy pushing through your skin and right into your cells. So it's great, really cool.
Nice.
And I brought you a sample so that we can show
I
you
like
about it.
samples.
Yeah. So this is the panel that actually sits inside the sauna.
Very
Okay.
cool.
And all I'm going to do is just take a very simple battery backup that you might use for your telephone and show you what happens.
Wow. All right. So we've got a ton of little, what appear to my human eye to be red LED lights.
Yeah, because 2 of the 3 frequencies in those lights are invisible to your eye.
Right. Okay.
But
nice.
if actually you took your iPhone, the lens on your iPhone is more sensitive than our eyes are, so you can pick up the other lights that are coming through that.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So this is inside the sauna.
Yes.
And
there's 2 of these that are positioned in the sauna.
Okay.
And then we throw a fair amount of power through so that when you're sitting in there, it's basically hitting from your torso, like this whole area of your body.
Mm-hmm.
And the results are fantastic.
What type of what's a story or what type of results are people getting? Like, even in, I think we've covered a little bit of chronic disease and chronic infections. What's someone who's already healthy and they start integrating a Therasage sauna or an infrared sauna and some of this light therapy into their routine? What can they expect to experience?
Well, the general ones are the easiest ones, which would basically be more restful sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And the sleep protocol, by the way, and there are people that do sauna sessions twice a day if their scheduling can permit.
Let's go through my clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. These frequencies go through everything but latex and silicone.
Okay.
So if you're wearing a stretchy kind of a gym type of outwear, outfit, then it would filter it so it still penetrate but not go as deep. Okay. And those that have any kind of like sort of implants, like breast augmentation, chin job, boob job, butt job, whatever kind of job you got, the frequencies, if the implant is above the muscle, then it'll filter and won't go as deep. We want it to go into the muscle. We want the frequencies to resonate and harbor there. So if the implant is under the muscle, then the muscle gets the frequency first, you're fine.
Yeah.
It won't hurt the implant, won't hurt any prosthetic. So the infrared is one of the best. I can't figure out who would not benefit from it.
Right.
Even though in our warnings it says if you're pregnant, don't use it because we're device developers. And we would hate for anything to go awry in your pregnancy. So we would have that disclaimer there. But you have to use common sense anyway. And
Right.
it doesn't make sense to put a healing pad right where the baby is in your third trimester. That wouldn't make sense. But on back pain and everything else, you certainly could use it without.
Yeah,
no
the
problem.
baby can't take off a sweater or step outside to cool off.
Right. Too early to communicate.
Yes, exactly. Tell us a little bit about some of the upgrades that you've created that work synergistically with the saunas and how those work on a scientific level.
Okay, so about 3 years ago, I started to dream about, I've got you in my sauna for 30 minutes, what more can I do to optimize your health? And the biohacking term of stacking really comes into play, because what you do to the complements or synergies of certain technologies, how you do it and how you dose it makes all the difference between an optimal result. And so when you're in sauna, a big thing is, well, you're sweating out your toxins. We talked earlier about mobilizing toxins, bioresonance, shakes everything loose, toxins pour into your blood. Sweating is one of the most efficient ways to get the toxins out. Hydrate properly before and after, and that helps flush everything out. All right, so now that I'm using and recruiting your skin to be, and it's hydrated, I can now use your skin, largest organ, to be a breathing organ to get things in. So what kind of things can I bring into your bloodstream, essentially? And one of the big therapies, particularly for microbial challenges and general health, is oxygen. As we get older, after 30, we stop making what's called a redox molecule. And the redox molecules basically are antioxidants. And they basically create, when we have an abundance of them, then we have better oxygenation in our blood.
You can think of like if you have a lot of redox potential, it means that your body has a high capacity to neutralize free radicals and oxidative stress.
Exactly.
And like when you're sick, your redox potential is usually pretty low.
Right. Exactly. So we've been fortunate because I'm a little older guy and I hang out with older people. And so the guy, Dr. Gary Samuelson, that developed ASEA, which is a redox supplement, also worked directly with Dr. Zach Bush. And they have our portable saunas and our other equipment that we have. And I sat with Gary, and Gary said, Gary, I love ASEA, I use it, but I'm not getting great results from it. And I just dosed based on what it says on the bottle. And
Were you telling him you loved it because you loved the concept of it?
The concept, and I was starting to get a little result, but I wasn't maximizing a result, and I didn't know why. And he said, "How much are you doing?" And I said, "I'm dosing based on the bottle." And he says, "That's not enough for you." So once I changed my dose, that's what we were just talking about. When you do it, in what order you do it, and how you dose, made all the difference in the world to me. Yeah. He said in response, "Robby, what I did is pretty good. What you did is really cool, because when we tested the redox reaction, when you come out of sauna, it's a full body redox response." So I said, wow, that sauna lowers oxidative stress 2 ways. One, it changes your sympathetic to parasympathetic. That's your brainwave function.
Which is where a detox happens. We're not detoxing well when we're sympathetic dominant.
Yeah, because you're at the edge. You need to be calm, and that's the difference. That's the shift.
It's like rest, digest, and detox in parasympathetic.
Exactly. So, and plus we're bringing more oxygen through nitric oxide to the blood directly. And so now the blood is poised, the body's mechanisms are working the way they're supposed to work naturally. And we're doing all that by just sitting, relaxing, and meditating, reading, watching a tube, answering friends on your cell phone, while you're in that little portable sauna.
Yeah.
So you can really do a lot of stuff. So what I focused on is what other things can I do and bring into that sauna environment that's going to help the full experience, wellness experience. One thing was guided meditation. Sit, listen to, music that calms your brain down a little bit. The other was I developed I brought it with, it was a little portable ozone device.
Yeah.
And what this does is it just takes natural air and it brings ozone through this side. You put this down on the floor of the sauna. It generates 750 milligrams per cubic inch per hour of ozone, breathable ozone. So that's a little bit different than the clinical grade. And so besides just for the sauna, you can use it in a small room. I generally travel with this, so it'll clear out the airborne bacteria or viruses in my hotel.
Yeah.
I'll bring it on the plane. I know the guy I'm flying with, actually, it's usually my wife, so she doesn't think I'm crazy, but the guy on the other side generally does. But I don't care because it keeps me well.
Yeah.
And it brings more oxygen into the cabin. So now your skin becomes a breathing organ. Your blood, because of the near frequencies, is anxious to get more oxygen, and I'm supplying it with more oxygen just with this little device.
Right.
So it's super cool.
So while you're getting all of the benefits that we've been talking about from the sauna itself, you're also absorbing single oxygen molecules, ozone is O3, but then it kind of like breaks apart into O2 and a single oxygen molecule. You're absorbing those through your skin. You're getting some of the immune benefits. You're getting some of the additional oxygenation where pathogens and most disease states have a very difficult time surviving.
Exactly.
That's a pretty cool stack. I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of ozone saunas. I've used them for years and just did one recently after not doing it in a while, and I was driving home and I felt like the trees looked brighter and the colors were more vibrant and I was seeing more detail, and I'm like, man, I need to do these more often.
Yeah, and with Lyme and microbial, all that stuff, you start hitting them with more oxygen and they don't like you.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about creating this in a simple setting in a 30-minute session. You could go for a bike ride or a healthy walk, weather permitting, right? It's wintertime now. We're in Florida, so we have a home court advantage in that way. But what we're talking about doing is what we're designed to do naturally, but we don't have time to do it, or the climate's not right, or we're not inspired to do it. So how can we create all of that great physiological stuff in 30 minutes in the comfort of your own home? That was where my mind was going with all this.
Yeah.
And we did another thing. We brought in, I'm a big fan of, in the early 80s, I spent some time over in London, and I thought one of my earlier dreams was to just buy a whole bunch of lavender fields and chamomile and start making essential oils. And so we started collecting and learning about the power of essential oils, which is really medicine. Most essential oils and most medicines are synthetic medicines, are derivatives of natural plants and animal, mostly plants, right? And flowers. And so what I did was I created a little device. Again, it's portable and it's a diffuser, and you just put your natural essential oil in here. I like organic stuff.
That's cool.
And basically we don't use any water because water denatures.
Do you use like doTERRA or Young Living, or is there another brand that you like?
All of them are good.
Yeah.
And we actually created 3 blends that we make and we sell with a chemist that we brought in that is interesting. But basically what I wanted to do, like if you like doTERRA or if you like Young Living or whichever brand you like, I don't want to jump into that. I just created a vehicle to let you bring that into the sauna experience so that you're maximizing the health experience. And that's what we're doing. We're using your skin and you just turn it on like that.
Cinnamon?
Well, this is one of our blends. Isn't that cool?
Nice, yeah.
There's actually 5 oils in here. Can you see it? The little mist coming up?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what we do that's a little different is we take the oils and we actually run them over certain crystals, so we get the crystal energy infused into it. So again, I'm a little out there.
We're gonna have some girls lining up to order this. I know.
Well, anyway, this is a fun thing, and it's portable, and you can bring it in your car, and you can bring it in the hotel, and all that other stuff. So it's not just for sauna, but that's what we designed it for.
They're clean too, that they don't have cords and things dangling off of them. And, yeah, very nice. So we have, this has been amazing. We've got a Biohacks discount code set up. So whether people want the traditional Therasage, you're going to save close to $100 on that. If you want to get the 360, that's got all these different wavelengths that we were talking about. We're using that with many of our clients now because of the benefits that they're experiencing. Same discount code will work. Biohacks, you'll save a little bit more money because that one's just a notch up. But both, sauna's indispensable tool, and the Therasage, its ability to like pop up, break down, you can travel with it if you want. It's very, very convenient, and we've got people that are in apartments, and then we've got people that are in mansions,
right,
both benefiting from this device and the convenience of a quick boot up and its ability to go high temp and do a lot of these things.
Plus, we don't have any electromagnetic fields, and I know you're big on that.
Yeah,
and now we've also refined the extreme low fields, which is basically dirty electricity, that change your body voltage. So we're the only ones doing that. Nice. And then we also, my new thing now, God, I can't wait to actually bring this out to the world. Because generally, I make these things, I employ them, and then I tell everybody. It's just the opposite from everybody out there. But we're working on harmonizing technology that actually builds your body biofield. Yeah. Because blocking and shielding, which is the traditional ways that you prevent EMFs from affecting the body, it's generally a reactive response. So I block and shield for 3G, they come out with 4. Mm-hmm. I ramp up to 4, they come out with 5. Mm-hmm. So the thing that drives the technology is the money in the devices and the speed of the technology and all that people buy into. But what about the health problems? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, but he's okay. So Klinghardt did blood studies, and he actually analyzed the blood in the Pacific Northwest of 200 patients. 100 were in the urban areas and 100 were in the rural areas. They eat the same food, breathe the same air, and basically drink the same water. But there was 90 times greater amounts of microtoxins in the blood studies on the people in the cities. Mm-hmm. The only difference is the concentration of cell towers.
Exactly.
So it's clear that cell towers activates these little bugs inside of us.
Yeah, and that means probably not just limited to, and I think that study was mold, right? Mold mycotoxins, and we've talked about this a lot with Carrie and Grant's mom, and the interrelationship of how if you're looking for mold, but you're in a high EMF environment, right? Like if you're testing a car, but you're holding your phone, you're ramping up the biotoxin production, and it's not giving you an accurate reflection of the mold environment, right? Because you're giving it an exponential increase,
exactly,
rather than just being able to compare environments. Yeah.
So with a Lyme patient, particularly, we have stable Lyme patients. They get hit with mold, bam, they go from managing their challenge to being bedridden. Mm-hmm. That's how powerful mm-hmm. that extra little twist is. Mm-hmm. So what we've done is we've shielded and we've also now harmonized. And harmonizing actually builds your body field. Mm-hmm. So that's more proactive. So if you give me a room full of computers and I'm building your biofield, those frequencies aren't actually coming in and affecting your immune system, or, which is a big thing, or putting more stress on you like everything else. Yeah. So we're going to have all those 3 technologies now, shielding, blocking, and harmonizing.
How are you doing the harmonizing? Are you using like stones and metals and like some of those
secret sauce. Actually, we created a substrate, a certain material that we do imprinting of frequencies on. So some of them will be the esophageal and the Schumann frequencies, which mm-hmm. is Earth frequency. Right. And so basically, earthing is one of the simplest ways to naturally harmonize and build your biofield.
That's why that's part of the reason that I moved from a big city to a place where I could go get in the ocean a few times a week.
That's it. Walk on the sand, kick your shoes off, hug mm-hmm. a palm tree. Yeah. Anything that's grounded into the earth, but most of us don't do that. Mm-hmm. And so we have to create these little technologies solutions. And so what I try to do is build a better mousetrap. And the harmonizing is the piece I'm on now, and it's so cool. So we do HRV, heart rate variability studies. We do kinesiology, muscle testing, to make sure that what we're doing is right and it's affecting all of us, mm-hmm. and how powerful it is. So it's pretty cool. And then we use natural gemstones that, like tourmaline in the sauna, and that creates negative ions, which is an earthing effect. Mm-hmm. We electrically ground all of our devices so that you're bringing earth charge through the electric current when it's on you, so it's like a grounding mat.
Yeah.
So there's lots of cool tech in that small little guy, but it does such great things. And
Amazing.
We're pretty happy with it.
Amazing. So cool. Thank you for the work that you're doing
Thank you. Appreciate
and
that.
your continued commitment to innovate. Therasage.com, THERASAGE.com. We've got discount code Biohacks for you guys. I recommend picking up the 360 if you're on the fence. Robby, last two questions to kind of bring it home before you share where people can stay up to date with you and things that you're working on. What one biohack or implementation, it could be allopathic medicine or something more homeopathic or anything, it doesn't matter, had the biggest impact on your daughter's health and recovery?
I did.
Besides the sauna.
There were two things. When she was at her worst health, and her natural fighting weight was 120. She got down to 85 pounds and labored to breathe. So I thought that she didn't have much more time. And I just asked her the question, which door do you want to go through? You're in control. And she said she basically wanted to stay with us. So we moved her to an apartment about right across the street from the beach on A1A. I said, this is our contract. Get up every morning. I don't care if it's raining, because women, they have a challenge with their hair and all that stuff. I said, I don't care if it's raining, snowing, which that doesn't happen in Florida. I want you on that beach for a half hour. Just walk the beach. Mm-hmm. So what am I doing? I'm bringing her minerals in the air. I'm having her touch the earth and the sand. She's getting negative ions. She's balancing her body battery. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the next thing I said, when you get from the beach, walk into your apartment and jump in the sauna for an hour. Those are the two things. And she went back from 85 to 120, 125, vibrant, feeling great, Those simple things. But she already, we drink filtered water, so that's an important thing. And she always ate clean, was very conscious of eating organic, non-gluten, all that stuff. So all that stuff was in place. The only part that was missing was the toxicity piece and being grounded. And I think both of those, if I were to give you guys any message, that would be the first place I would go.
That's huge. Yeah, if you haven't optimized your environment by reducing your exposure to unnatural electromagnetic frequencies, and we've got a lot of episodes where we go into this a little bit more, and if you haven't integrated sauna for the detoxification, for the immune benefits, for the thermoregulation like we've covered here, those two changes alone can produce disproportionate increases in your quality of life. And if you don't have a sauna or you're looking for a way to do that, head over to Therasage.com. Use discount code Biohacks if you're feeling froggy and inspired by this conversation. Robby, where can people stay up to date with what you're working on and cool new things you're coming out with?
Well, probably our website's the best one.
Okay.
So that's www.therasage.com.
Okay.
That's the easiest way. We have a call center. I don't just make devices. I actually work with practitioners and individuals to create manicured protocols. Mm-hmm. So we're not just selling devices. We actually care about that you're having a good experience. Another thing that's also unique about our devices is that they're all plug and play. So if a part goes away, like I was thinking, you got someone with Lyme disease and they're in Bali. Mm-hmm. The product breaks down. They give me a call. It would take them a week to get it to me, a week to fix it, and a week to get it back. If you're using that sauna as sort of a life preserver or a lifeline, you don't want to be out of pocket for 3 weeks. Right. Everything that we make is completely integrated. So one phone call, 2 minutes, I figure out what you need. We can FedEx it to you overnight. You plug out the old one, you plug in the new one, you're back flying the plane. So that's might sound trivial, but was a technical feat for me to do.
It's huge.
And
I've got a Juve light in there with one of the panels out, and I'm like, who do I even need to call to get on this? Yeah, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's part of what we do. It's what we do to give back, because we lived that nightmare and the dynamic of having a child that's sick. And as a parent, you'd always want to take the bullet, Yeah. But when your child is sick, you do anything for them. And what turned out to be something for her now has turned out to be for everybody, because Lyme and chronic disease and these challenges that people are having and the environment being so toxic. 20 years ago, I never had that vision. Mm-hmm. I was actually very selfish because I was just thinking about my daughter, but I had no idea about how far this would go. And we get calls every day about people telling us how much we've saved their lives, and it's just so. I mean, there's no money that can speak to that. So it's just really, I'm so grateful for being in the position, meeting you, having a chance to meet your audience, and hopefully inspire some people to learn a different way or a better way, or even if just a kernel of what we've talked about gets somebody going. That's all we look for.
Yeah, we appreciate it so much. This has been a ton of fun. And guys, if you've gotten any value from this episode or any episode of the Biohacking Secret Show podcast, we're giving away a free $297 course that we filmed with the Stanford professor of neurobiology, Dr. Andrew Huberman, on biohacking the brain. And so for anyone that jumps on, subscribes to the Biohacking Secret Show podcast, and sends a photo of their review, preferably 5 stars, but I actually encourage honesty. So if there's stuff that you'd like to see different, give us an honest review. I'll still give you the points. We'll send you the course. All you got to do is Instagram message it to @biohackingsecrets with the screenshot. We'll get you the course. And so we're doing that too. Robby, thank you so much. Appreciate you, man. This has been a blast.
All right, great.
Thanks.
Super.